Okay, I think we're live. Gonna test my setup here. And what happened? Come on, Facebook. Oh, shoot. Okay, all right, we're back. Now I'm gonna test my setup. Yeah, cool. All right, we're good. Hi, good morning. Welcome to another wonderful edition of SIC Maui Talk Stories. I'm Seychelle. I'll be hosting again today. We're going to talk about a really popular question that I get all the time about paddle height. How tall should my paddle be? Is my paddle too short? Is my paddle too long? And it's a very interesting topic to talk about because just like with most things in life, there's not an exact do this, don't do that. This is how tall your paddle should be. This is right. This is wrong. It doesn't exist. So what I'm going to do is just offer you the advice that I can, what I work with when what I see and what I tell paddlers when I work with them on what you're looking for, what you're feeling for in your paddle height and how that's going to differ from person to person. And, paddler to paddler based off of your body, based off of your paddling style, based off of your paddling goals, based off of your technique, your board, your paddle. All of those different things. There's so many different factors to consider. So I'm going to try and talk about all of those things today. And what I'm going to ask from you, my lovely audience, is to please participate. I will be checking comments as often as I can. I won't see them when I'm up demoing, but I'll come back and check. So please ask questions. Otherwise, this might be a really short topic this morning because I want to be able to answer for you that are watching what it is that you need to know. So let's dive in. If you're watching, you probably have had that question: how tall should my paddle be? And yeah, the answer is different for every person. So there's a few schools of thought. When we first started paddling with absolute beginners, you remember, maybe you don't, maybe you do, but what we were mostly first taught, and when I first started paddling, I was teaching total beginners, and we would teach you put your hand up over your head and you bend at the wrist, and you want your paddle to be at about wrist height, with that bend here at the top. And so you notice my paddle's a good 6 inches shorter than that. Another one you hear a lot, so that's for total beginners oftentimes, and I'll talk about the reasons why that is. But as you get more progressed, more advanced as a paddler, you will end up inevitably feeling that you need to have a shorter paddle. So that's why, my paddle is quite a bit shorter. So the other thing you hear for racers, right? And most of you are probably have a race board, and maybe you're competitive or you're just recreational, but you want to do this there's not again a right or wrong, but in a more advanced way. And so another one you hear a lot is, you put one shaka on top of your head, and that's how tall your paddle should be. So if you can see, my paddle is actually still maybe 1 or 2 inches shorter than my shaka. However, I do think for a more advanced paddler, this shaka height is a little bit closer to what we're seeing nowadays for most paddlers. So that gives you sort of a baseline to start from, and what we're looking for is being able to get the entire paddle into the water. So this is going to vary depending on the length of your paddle blade, right? So some paddle blades are, longer and narrower, some are shorter and fatter. So that's going to determine how deep the paddle actually needs to go. I'm pretending there's a your paddle, your board height or depth, or basically how far above the water you are standing, okay? So on older race boards or on inflatables, you see that we stand kind of on top of the deck of the board, right? And then on some newer race boards, and definitely on what we would call a dugout, there's a cockpit, right? And you're standing lower. Let me actually grab my board. I'm going to demo that for you. Okay, so a flat deck, and I would be standing at this level, which is about, I guess, a shaka distance from waterline, or probably a little bit less because waterline is like here, right? But actually, this is my RS, and the deck is recessed a bit. So I'm actually standing about here, not too far above the water line, right? So a dugout, you're going to be standing almost at water level. And again, for an inflatable or most recreational boards, you're going to be standing on top of the deck, so you're going to be higher up out of the water. Why does that matter? Because that determines, oh gosh, my neighbor just started with power tools. I hope that's not super distracting. At least I have headphones in. That's going to determine, again, how far the paddle needs to travel. The higher up above the water you are, pretend this is my water line here, the milk crate level. The higher I'm standing up on my board versus down low in a cockpit on my board, is going to determine how much further distance my paddle has to travel to get the blade fully buried, right? So blade size variability, paddle board, how far above the depth of the board, of the depth of the water line I'm standing, those two things are going to be different from board to board, from paddler to paddler. And then again, your technique. So am I somebody who, actually, I'm going to pause for 1 second there, and I'm going to look for questions because I did see one question come in. Okay. Yeah, so Dino, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and good morning, Marianne, nice to see you, is asking, so he has two different boards, a rigid board and an inflatable, and does his paddle height need to change for those two different boards? And the answer is maybe yes, because it depends, is one board higher up than the other? If that's a significant difference, if that's a minimal difference, probably not. Right? If that's a significant, 2 inches or more difference, then probably yes, depending on, if performance really matters to you in that moment, do I need to change? If you're paddling on an inflatable board and you're just going out for fun, do you need to change your paddle height just to go for a fun paddle? Probably not. But if you had your paddle adjusted for the inflatable, and then you went on, a race board and you wanted a little bit more performance, then you might want to adjust for that, right? So probably yes, but not necessarily. I hope that answers that question. It depends on the difference of the board and what your goals are for that session. So, cool, great questions. Keep asking questions. So then I was saying that the next body. This person, I would ideally like my milk crates to be like 3 inches taller, but let's pretend that's fully buried, right? So if I'm somebody who gets down really low when I paddle, I'm probably going to need a shorter paddle height than somebody who likes to stay more upright, right? And I'm not going to talk about paddle technique and what's correct and what's incorrect. I'm just going to talk about from where you are and how you like to paddle, what feels good for your body. Is going to somebody who bends their knees a lot more is going to be, you know, the more I bend my knees when I lower my body and I lower my paddle into the water, the shorter of a paddle I need than somebody who likes to be more upright. And that's also going to be different for somebody who doesn't really bend in the knees but just bends over. So again, varying from person to person, what you're looking for is when my blade is fully buried, so when I've got my paddle totally buried and I'm basically in the power phase of my stroke, meaning I've got downward pressure and I'm pulling against that pressure to drive my body forward. So when my blade's fully buried and I'm paddle and I'm under power, I'm looking for, and it might be easier to demonstrate this on the other side. I'm looking for my shoulder position and my shoulder, basically, you know, comfort and alignment. So if your blade's fully buried, and see how at this point my shoulder is quite extended, and my hand is like way over top of my head, right? So I'm paddling and my hand is way above my head height. This is actually putting quite a lot of strain on my shoulder, okay? So then I would say this paddle is too tall. And I would shorten it. If I am fully loaded and this shoulder is basically nice and in the joint, I can have my shoulders back, I can have my chest up, feel like I can breathe, and I feel like I can actually relax my shoulder in this position. That's a good height. This is actually, again, because I would ideally love to have these milk crates be 2 inches higher. For me personally, if this was my board at the moment, I would say it's just a little too tall. I would rather it be, I'm going to grab down lower. I would rather be right here. I'd rather like my shoulders in alignment and my top hand is like when I'm in that blade fully buried power phase of my stroke. My hand is usually like right eye level, and I always have a slight bend in this top arm, and my shoulder can be nice and relaxed in the joint, right? So if it's up here, it's too tall. If it's down here, right, and I don't see this very often, but maybe you're somebody who you dig really deep, or you have a really short paddle, right? How would I know if my paddle's too short? Which I often see, more often than not, I see paddles that look maybe a little too tall. So I'm looking for my paddle, looking for my top hand to be protecting the shoulder, to be right here, nice alignment, right, rather than up too high and I'm putting a lot of load on the shoulder, or down too low. But too low, personally, I think a little bit better than too high. And you can feel that difference if you're playing along, like the difference in how my shoulder feels in this position versus this position. I can really feel my lat a lot better. And that's what I want to be able to feel, is the lat engaging and the shoulder able to relax. I want to be able to have my shoulders back, my chest up. So when and go ahead and ask me questions if that's all making sense. So when I am watching paddlers paddle, when they ask me, is my paddle the right height? Those are the things that I'm watching for, is as they're paddling, when they're powered up in their stroke, the blade is fully, first, is the blade getting fully buried? Are they going deep enough? Are they going too deep, right? And when they're in that phase of the stroke, what does the shoulder position look like? Is that lat engaged, or are they kind of jacked up in this joint? And that's going to help determine. So some pointers that I have for helping you if you think your paddle might not be the right height. What do I do, right? If possible, I don't have an example to show you, but if possible, if you have an adjustable paddle that is similar in size, shape, and weight to your regular paddle, which is most of us are like, yeah, I have an adjustable paddle, but it's like aluminum, or it's not going to be the same. It's not going to feel the same, but it can help you if you do have an adjustable to try, 1 inch shorter or 2 inches shorter, or maybe 1 inch higher or 2 inches higher if you think your paddle might be too short. You can try with an adjustable or a friend's adjustable. You can try to borrow to see how it feels, making it a little bit shorter or longer. And it's going to be also not just because it's hard to see ourselves when we're paddling. So you're going to have to really feel what it feels like in the shoulders, in the chest, in the lats. You don't want to get in the habit of watching your paddle. How deep am I going? Or, but just taking into consideration what I said, all those different variables about your paddle size, blade height, your board height. Does that change from board to board? Yes. Like, especially if you're somebody with two different race boards, a dugout and a flat deck, that's going to make a difference, right? The other thing is, do I like to paddle more? Do I like to get really low and dig deep, or am I like to be more upright? So I personally, very privileged, yes, I know, but I have a couple different paddles. Thank you, SIC. Thank you, Black Project. I have a couple different paddles because when I'm doing a shorter race and I'm digging a little harder and I'm getting my body a little bit deeper and a little bit lower, I'm using a shorter paddle than if I'm doing a longer distance race and I want to be able to stay more upright and not go as much into my legs or into my back. I'll use, and I'm talking 1 inch difference. I literally, some of my paddles are 72 inches and some of them are 71 inches, and my height is 67 and a half. So that's quite short, but not as short as some racers. And don't think because my paddle height is only 3-4 inches above my head, yours needs to be 3-4 inches above your head. What I see on more on an average is 5-6 inches. I don't, for racers, typically see 7-8 inches above head height being beneficial for shoulder position. But again, this is a good starting point, and being able to play with that by trying out an adjustable could be helpful. If you don't have an adjustable, I recommend, if you're thinking about changing, again, try and find friends that you could borrow their paddles. And then I recommend, if you're gonna cut your paddle, just do it. So I always glue mine with hot glue. So all you have to do is heat it up and it'll slide right off, right? So it's easy to remove the handle and make adjustments and then get that handle back on with some good quality hot glue. So what I would do is just a little bit for those of you in centimeters, it's like 2 centimeters at a time are, it would be the most that you would want to adjust at a time to see how that feels. And I would definitely not do more than 2 inches maximum at a like of adjustment. Facebook or Instagram and ask questions. I'm really happy to offer advice. I am about to go on a maternity leave for several weeks, 2-3 months, where I won't be super available, but I will, I'll be checking in periodically, and I'll definitely get back to you. This will be my last Talk Story live again for the next 2-3 months, so that's really exciting. And thank you so much to SIC for putting this talk together, for bringing us here, for having this platform, for having amazing equipment for us to use. And yeah, thank you all for watching. Thanks for being here. Stoked to share this info with you, and I look forward to seeing you again really soon. Thanks so much. Okay, I don't see any more comments. 3, 2, 1. Bye.